for how you deal with oil companies, the kind of things that you have to manage with them, the disagreements that come with it, and some of the complications and so on. And that's kind of how I chose the masters, which I chose, which was oil and gas enterprise management. It was in Aberdeen University, Scotland, and I had applied for Shebang Scholarship to go there, and I'll touch on what Shebang Scholarship is in a second. So my idea was that I was a geoscientist. I didn't have a lot of experience in interpretation of seismic or logs and so on, but I liked the mix of the management of geoscience, whether it was to do with contracts or being a regulator and so on. So I took a degree. I chose to do this master's degree that was a bit mixed. There was a bit of drilling, there's a bit of geoscience, there's a bit of law, a bit of contract management, economics, and so on. So I was specifically asked a little bit about the Shebang Scholarship. So any of you all who can Google it, you'll see what it is. It's a UK scholarship. It comes from the government of the UK through our local UK High Commission. So you can apply online. I think applications just closed for next year. So you usually apply by October, November of the previous year that you intend to study. Study usually begins in September, and it's 1 year full-time masters. The amount Shebang scholarships are given out, there are about 500 or 600 given out every year worldwide, and they come from basically every country. When I was there, I think people were coming from at least 50 or 60 different countries. Trinidad, in terms of how much we're given here, it depends on how much sponsorship they get. So it's sponsored by different companies. So in the year that I went, 2 scholarships were given. The year after me, I think it may have been more like 4. And I think currently it's probably more like one per year. That's just based on how many companies are willing to sponsor. In contrast, and I'll talk about Guyana, in contrast to Guyana, they used to have 1 Shebang scholarship, maybe 2. And I know in last year, at least last year or 2, they've had as much as 15, at least 15, I believe. People have been selected to go, and that's based on all the investment going on in Guyana and the oil companies that are working there. So they've gotten really good sponsorship. So it's definitely something that you guys can look at and looking to apply to. The basis of the scholarship is more on leadership potential and how you can use the degree that you go to bring back that information, that knowledge, that experience, and help develop your country. So I would have explained at that time how I thought that my master's would have helped me in working in Trinidad in the energy sector, particularly in the ministry, to help develop the way that we regulate and solve some of the issues that I had identified and so on. And then coming back to Trinidad now, so I would have finished that degree in 2015. So I left a job that I had at the ministry in 2014 in September, and that was when oil prices were about $100. And you all would know that after that, oil prices began to slide tremendously. And by a couple of months later, by January or so, the oil price was just maybe $25 a barrel or so, and it was crazy. The industry was in a state of chaos. When I had started in Aberdeen, in the first month, things were still looking good. I remember there were career fairs and so on, and companies came and they basically offered to give us jobs. They said, like, based on your resume and your experience, yeah, we'll hire you. Shell and a few other companies said things like that. But a couple of months later, those companies were laying off people by the hundreds and thousands. And Trinidad also was affected at that time. So I would have expected when I was away, when I was out there, that by the time I was finished, I would have opportunities abroad. I probably could stay in the UK or somewhere else. And by the time I was done, the oil price was again very, very low, and companies were struggling again, similar to back in 2008. So within the space of like 7 years, you see 2 major oil price crashes. And coming back to Trinidad, there were very few opportunities. So most oil companies were not hiring, especially not geoscientists. I tried to get back into our Ministry of Energy, but we had several changes, right? The government had just changed. I was on contract. The oil price was obviously very low. A new budget had just been passed. They were trying not to hire. There were several reasons why I wasn't able to get back in there. So coming back home, and I mean, it wasn't just me. There were others I knew who went on scholarship or was studying or something like that, or maybe it had just come out of university around that time. Some of you all would have known that that time was pretty tough to get a job in oil and gas, especially as a geoscientist or a petroleum engineer, I suppose. So it was a couple of months of searching, looking. I started looking into all the different industries or different jobs I saw advertised online and so on. Applied to anything where I thought that wasn't necessarily oil and gas, but where I thought that my experience or background might be able to lend some. I would be able to use my background to do the job. So I started applying for things in marketing, finance, sales, a bunch of different things. Anything that I thought I would remotely be able to handle, right? In different companies and so on. And obviously, as you all know, most of those applications seem to disappear into abyss or something. You don't get a response on most of them. And after you do dozens of these things, and every one of them I was tailoring a resume for, trying to change it up a bit to do all that. You feel like you're not getting anywhere. So it was about 6 months after I came back home, maybe a little bit less than that. And I got a call from what I thought it was Answer Macau Group, and I know they have many companies. So they asked me to come in for an interview. Well, I never yet, just to meet with them actually. So I didn't know what it was for because I know they have so many companies, but I said, okay, something inside here might be energy related. It turns out it was actually the title part of Answer Macau, and they were asking, they wanted to know if I was interested in insurance sales, life insurance sales, and so on. Something that I had no idea about really, something that I was never interested in, something that I thought was like, why would I want to do this? But at that point, there are very few options, and I said, you know what, there's must be some benefit to be gained here, whether it's in terms of sales or learning more about insurance, which is something most people need. Everybody should needs it. I'll take up the challenge. Let me see what it's about. It's a pretty flexible kind of job. You have a lot of time where you can schedule your own activities and so on. So I said, you know what, I'll do this while I still search for other jobs and while I still do other activities. So while I started there, I started the trading course and whatnot, and I started doing sales. A very difficult job, much more difficult than you would think, especially when you have to approach people and cold call, and you start tackling people who you know as friends or colleagues, and it's not an easy thing to do to engage all these people to try to sell them a product, even though it's something that most of them didn't have. At the same time, we got involved to form the first chapter of the AAPG, so this YP chapter. I think Xavier would have brought the opportunity to us. He said, look, the AAPG is supportive of us forming our first official chapter. I think you and a couple of us decided, look, we'll go up to be the first, the first board then of that chapter. And we went in, started off. We had no money, no support. The AAPG said, go ahead and use all our information and so on, but there's no cash to give you. So you guys go ahead and start, and any other support you have, we'll give it to you guys. And we started the chapter. We started with a couple of events. And in the first couple of months, we had a bunch of different talks, a few field trips. I remember we had a poster convention. We were doing a newsletter and stuff like that to get a lot of people involved. And I think there was a lot of interest at the beginning, especially because people were looking for ways to network and to get involved. And I thought that that's something that was really valuable to me to be a part of that so early on. So I was doing that while I was doing the insurance sales. I think that was my way of keeping very involved in the society as well, and in the oil and gas industry. At the same time, I was writing a paper for SPE conference that was coming up that same year. I was involved with the GSPT, trying to make sure I was in the loop on what was going on elsewhere. So I did the insurance sales for a few months, and I had applied for a scholarship to go to do something with geoscience in Europe, actually, in Poland, actually, in Europe. It was a 6-month scholarship, and I was successful in getting that. And I had planned to leave Trinidad by about September, and I wasn't seeing much job opportunity, so I said, what, I'll leave by that time, and take this thing up. And I think at that time there were some articles probably online or in the newspaper saying that I got the scholarship. One of the other things I was doing at the time, I was trying to write in the newspaper, so I contacted the Guardian, Business Guardian, and I was writing a couple of articles on the energy sector in a couple of different areas. It wasn't geoscience related necessarily, it was a couple of different things. So I was talking about maybe fuel subsidy in one case, some of the electricity generation. And one of the articles I wrote was about Guyana. So this was 1 year after they had their first discovery, or less than a year. They only had one discovery so far, and I figured, if by all indications, this is going to be huge. They're probably going to start finding more fields. There's going to be big development, and it's going to change Guyana completely, could possibly change the whole Caribbean. So I wrote an article to that effect in the newspaper. It was published, and I think that is how people at Rams Logistics saw it and got in contact with me through different friends and associations and so on. And I didn't go in for an interview, it was just a discussion, just a chat. And after meeting with the CEO once or twice, they offered me a job, really because they wanted to look into the possibility of operating oil fields. Small ones onshore, the way that some of the smaller companies do. Those smaller fields that just produce like 100, 200 barrels a day, what you could do with that. So I had a pretty good idea of how to go about it. So I had to make a difficult decision here, which was to turn down the scholarship that I got and take up the job here. And the reason I did that was because, well, I wanted to work in Trinidad, but also I saw the potential of Guyana. I saw that this company is already working there in some way with Exxon. It's not geoscience, it's not engineering, but they are involved with them, and it's probably going to be large. So I think I want to be at the forefront of this. I think I want to be there. So I made that decision. I started off with Rams on a totally different project, looking at oil and gas production. And then a couple of months later, I was drafted in to help the contracts team. And at that time, the contracts team was just one person, one or two persons, to help them do bids. And I remember the first bid I was working on was one for Halliburton. And then I was working on a bid for Schlumberger. And then I was working on a bid for seismic survey. And then we were working on a bid for subsea construction, where they were building pipelines, where the company was building pipelines and needed logistics support. And in a few months, quickly, I was bidding for these projects with operators, with service companies, with rigs, and we were doing this for the first time in Rams. So the way that we were doing it and the systems and stuff were now being developed. So departments were now being created, safety departments, quality departments, HSEQ, a whole bunch of different things were now happening for the first time. So I got to help advise on how these things should be done from the ground up, and different policies will help develop and design when it came to local content, CSR, marketing, and so on. So, my roles did evolve a bit over time, got more involved in contracts and proposals, eventually took over all their proposals and bids. Then there was a lot of involvement in new ventures, and a lot of different new projects that the company was looking into that I was at the forefront of. Renewable projects, one of which we may see materialize in the next year. A wind farm project that we were working on since 2016 may actually materialize in the next year or two. So definitely look out for that. And quite a few other things too, in terms of asset development and stuff related to logistics. So, the company is good in a way that it didn't pigeonhole you into one area. They said, well, you have all this knowledge, you're smart, you have vision, so you get involved in all these different things, and we're just going to throw things at you, and we're just going to throw you into different things. And I got thrown into all different places, and I, learned on the job sort of, and very interesting to me. I like the diversity of it. Some people like doing one thing at a time. I like being involved in 10 different things at a time. Sometimes it was 20 and 30 different things at a time, which became a bit more challenging, but still was very interesting. And now I head up all the business development for the energy sector. And this is inclusive of all the upstream that we know, but also the downstream. So anything to do with point leases, Atlantic, and power generation companies. And one of the highlights of working at RAMS was that in some of the projects that we won, it was projects in Suriname and so on. And it caused us to open a Suriname office. New projects caused us to create subsidiary companies like Eldorado Offshore and employ more people in Guyana, and ramp up our personnel significantly. Open office in Suriname. Then we decided, look, we need to be closer to the oil company, so we opened an office in Houston to be more close to where the head offices are. Formalized an office in Miami with a warehouse. 2019, we opened an office in Mexico, and we are actually right now in the process of opening an office in Colombia. So, on the success of these different projects, which I was very much involved in, we now had some revenue to open new offices and branch out and bring new people in and have new ideas and form new companies and so on. And I was very fortunate because it was a bit of luck, also being lucky to be with a company that is interested in expanding in these type of ways, especially in these times. And a bit of luck in the services as well, because there's not every single service that a company provides you could do that with. Logistics happens to be one of those things that you can export, right? Or you can do remotely as well. So, to present day, that's where I am. So I'm not a geoscientist. I'm not doing geoscience anymore, but I still am a geoscientist. I'm still quite aware. I try to keep in touch of what's happening, and it helps in many different ways. So I think there are quite a lot of transferable skills between any degree that you do really, and any job that you could take, right? But in my personal experience, we are working for oil companies, and sometimes understanding what they do, it really helps to build that relationship and help your sales as well. So me understanding how seismic vessels work, understanding how drilling rigs work, understanding how the logging tools are, and all those different aspects, they help you connect better to your client, so to speak, right? And I think there are quite a lot of other transferable skills, one of which is along the lines of technical writing and understanding complex information and being able to simplify it. All of you all who studied geoscience or engineering or any technical degree, you would have had to write and read technical papers, right? And a lot of those papers are quite complex. And usually you have to take it, understand it, summarize it, use it in your own papers. The ability to summarize something complex and technical and break it down for the average person who doesn't understand anything about that is a key skill that you all should pay special attention to develop. So what I would say is, when you branch out into other industries, or even if you stay in oil and gas, don't try to write technically and complex. Right? Most of the papers I've ever read have been extremely complex for no reason. Sometimes people just like to show off that they can write very complicated things. Be simple, explain things simply. If you can explain how solid basin geology works simply, you'll be far more valuable than somebody who understands the complications but doesn't know how to translate that to somebody else, right? And building those bridges with communication is really, really important. So what I was able to do, what I found I was able to do is look at these complex bids with all sorts of different things in it and summarize now what is really required. Break it down for the rest of the team to understand and clearly say, we need to do this by this date in this way. How do we present this information? Does it need to be in a table? Should it be in a graphic? Should it be a map? It's a paragraph of writing better, bullet points, infographics. how can we present this information to our client to make sure that they understand exactly what it is that we're proposing, and therefore they'll be more likely to award us work, right? So I think that is very, very key. And for those of you who work on complex information, I think that's a very, very important thing for you all to look at. I wanted to say, yeah, and of course, communication skills in general. So that's written. Oral is also very important. Take as many opportunities as you need, as you can, to speak in public, right? Whether it's in forums like this, in universities, in schools, and work, to do presentations, you know, even in your church and other religious places, and in any event, really, take the opportunity to speak publicly. The more you do it, the more comfortable you become, the easier it is for you. And it's a skill that really, really is going to be valuable later on in life for sure, in any job, right? So I think, and written now, in terms of written things, I found that a key weakness I've seen in a lot of people is the ability to write emails very to the point, very professionally, to maintain your tone of email so that they come off in a very respectful, nice, friendly way. And then sometimes if you need to in a more harsh way without being too rude or disrespectful. And also to explain things to people, because a lot of people they write emails very badly. They don't explain what they want. People, it's not easy for them to understand. And even though those things might seem very simple, very trivial, they are things that I would look for now as a potential employer, and I know that a lot of companies do look for. So a couple other points I wanted to make. I see I have some points jotted down here. Employers want to see grit and perseverance, right? What does that mean? If you study petroleum engineering and you don't get a job in petroleum engineering, that's fine, that's understandable. Chances are most people are not going to get those jobs anymore. But you should be trying to do something, right? Whether it's volunteer work, whether it's working with these societies, whether it's taking up a job in a different field or something that you might consider beneath you, but a job that allows you to gain some experience, gain some money. Every single job has experience. I remember there was somebody that we hired with an engineering degree who was working in the bank as a teller. And you know, I told her that your experience working as a teller might be the most valuable experience you ever got. Because anybody who has ever been to a bank knows that the lines are crazy long. The tellers are facing everybody in a row. They have to deal with all these difficult customers, most people who are pissed off and annoyed that they have to wait so long. And they have to meet and deal with every different kind of person. And that patience that you develop there, that training that you get on the job, that's pretty invaluable. You're not going to get that in a university, and you're not going to get that sitting behind a desk. So you know, those things really show some grit and some willingness to do things outside your comfort zone. And those are things that I would look for again as a potential employer. And I think most people do look for those things right now. Yeah, so I would say on the technical writing side, just try keep the PhD writing in universities. Write simply. Don't write no complex sort of stuff. When you do presentation, you're not really impressing anybody with your complex language and your complicated information. Break it down as easy as you can, right? Don't feel that you can't be an expert in something that you didn't study. And that I see a lot of people who do different degrees, they have that that feeling that, you know, I didn't study this. I didn't study economics. I didn't study accounts. I didn't study HR. You know, I didn't study engineering. Therefore, I can't ever be really good at that, or I don't know much about it. So I'm not going to try to be an expert in it. Yeah, you can be an expert in it. Everything is online. The whole world of information is online now. You have free courses from all the top universities in the world. You have books, and you have all the different information and papers available. You can become really, really adept in any one of these fields that you want to, right? It may never be the same as actually having a degree in it, but you can get pretty close and you can get pretty knowledgeable and you can be pretty all around as well, right? So I would say definitely if you are a geoscientist, if you're an engineer, don't feel like, well, I didn't do accounting, so I don't need to know about that. No, you should know about that. You should know all parts of how business works. You should know all aspects of it, right? If there are two key skills that I think that people should try to have, So one is learning another language, and we always hear about that. I never learned another language. I always thought my brain wasn't wired for it. But if you guys can, and you have the time and you have the ability to learn in Spanish or any other language, is really very, very helpful for employers, especially as we become more globalized. The other skill that I think that we need to start looking at developing, and I said it in a talk last week with the SPE, is around coding, right? Computer coding and programming. I think that in the next few years, next 5 to 10 years, coding is going to be as basic a requirement as knowing how to use Excel or Microsoft Word. I think understanding basic coding is going to be just a basic requirement of any job. So anybody who has the time, again, who's in school, who's looking at, and I know some people are, quite a lot of people who are, there are quite a few free courses online in terms of coding and programming. And I think that's something that you need to understand and learn as we become more digital, as we become more IT driven, right? And COVID has pushed that a few years forward, I think, as well. Develop your personal brand on social media. That is a really key one as well. Most of you are here on social media, right? You're on WhatsApp, well, you're on WhatsApp, you're on Facebook, you're on Instagram, LinkedIn. Maybe you're just on one of them, or maybe you're not very active. But developing that personal brand on those platforms is very important for your career. So LinkedIn is like a must, right? If you're looking for a job and you're not on LinkedIn, then you're wasting a lot of time. Get on LinkedIn, form a profile, follow from pages, add some people, post stuff, post comments, like stuff, write articles, or just normal posts, put them up. Those are really, really helpful. I would not hire anybody who I did not get a chance. I actually, every time we have to do an interview, I always check for that person's Facebook or LinkedIn profile to get a bit of an idea about them. We could tell quite a lot about somebody from their social media profiles. The world has changed. It's no longer, well, that's private and that doesn't belong in the workplace. No, everything is quite intertwined now. Working from home, your social media is part of your personality, part of yourself. How that reflects on companies and so on is very important. So create that brand online, post things. Don't let social media become your something that hurts you either, right? So don't be on social media poisoning your own professional image by posting things that are hateful or racist or things that come off very badly, because the employers will not want to see that, right? In the energy sector particularly, what a lot of people don't focus on, especially I know geoscientists and so on, don't focus a lot on is on the supply chain. So they know the companies that they deal with, so they know the operators and they know the service companies that they operate with. But the supply chain is huge. If you look at from upstream all the way down to the end users, you have thousands of different companies. In Trinidad alone, we have hundreds of companies in that supply chain, providing all sorts of different services. And it's only when I was at Rams I realized how many companies there were and how many services there are. How trucking companies could be so integral to the energy sector. You would never really think about that if you're just strictly a geologist. It doesn't really occur to you. But there are so many companies inside there that you could work for, that you could create even, right? If there's a need for. So understanding that supply chain is really, really important. When you understand the supply chain and you understand the companies in the supply chain, you now understand who your potential employers are. And then you can actually find people who work for those companies and get to know them and get recommendations from them and get introductions. And to me, what I've seen is that people who get hired, very, very few people, and at least where I've worked, have gotten hired strictly because they applied to an ad and then they just got shortlisted and got interviewed and got hired. That happens, but by and large, my experience has been that people who get introduced, recommended by somebody working in the company, especially somebody senior, it helps and goes a really, really long way. I know last year or this year, maybe earlier this year, there were two people who were applying for a position, and they both did a degree that the HR team thought that I might know them. And when I looked at the two of them, they had the same degree and so on, same amount of experience, but I actually knew one of them because they were involved in one of these societies, right? SPE. And because one of them was involved in SPE, I said, well, look, I know this person. I've seen them around. They're active, they're friendly, they're a nice person, and so on. And I would recommend this person just based on that. I don't know the other one. You can make a decision in the interview, but this is the one I would push forward just based on what I know. And that was the person that ended up getting the position. So the networking really does help. Even though I never really spoke to that person before, I observe them on social media and I see their posts and I see them on field trips and things like that. So knowing people is important, but also having people know you is very important, right? Both are quite important. And on social media, you can actually have a lot of people knowing you who you don't know. And that is very, very valuable as well, right? Just a couple other things I'll add. As we get more digital, people get proficient at Zoom and Microsoft Teams and so on, become really good at it because it's going to be the future. We're going to be using Zoom and Teams and these platforms for quite a long time. The better you get at it, the easier it is to use and the more professional you look. When it comes to submitting resumes, don't have a standard resume. You should have different resumes for different companies. You tailor your resume to suit the position you're applying for, right? If you're in a whole different industry, then you take out the valuable parts of one thing and you put it forward somewhere else. So if you're applying to work with us at Ramps, your experience with petrol is not very important, but your experience doing certain other things might be, right? And similarly, if you're applying to BP, you definitely want to highlight that experience in petrol, but maybe your sales experience might not be so important. Yeah. So do research, do research on the companies that you're looking to work for. Try to understand what they do and how you could fit in. And remember, when you're trying to get a job, think of it like you run a business and you're trying to sell a product or service to clients. You are the business, you are the product or the service, and you're trying to sell yourself to the company. So you want to provide a really high level of customer service. You want to show them how good an employee you can be, how progressive, how forward thinking, how you can get along with people. And getting along with people is really fundamentally important. I know there's a train of thought that you don't need to like the people you work with, you don't need to be friends with the people you work with. You just need to get the job done. I disagree with that. I think that if you are friends with the people you work with, if you get along with them well, if they get along with you, then you do a much better job. And I only want to work with people who I get along with. People who I don't like and don't get along with, I don't care. They could be the smartest person in the room. They're not going to get very far generally. So, that personality and so on is really, really critically important as well. So, just some tips, some points that I wanted to share with you guys. I know that there might be questions on Facebook or on Zoom from different persons. Feel free and I'll take any questions you guys have. I've been talking to myself for a little while now, so I don't mind taking some questions.
All right, thanks so much, Javed, Charles here. This was a really great talk. I mean, everyone's story is so different. It was really good hearing it from your side of things, someone who actually diversified their career path. So we have a couple of questions. We got some questions on Zoom. The attendees, they submitted some beforehand, so I'll probably go into a few of those. The first one, so how did you decide to specialize and to go into the finance side of things?
So I did not specialize or go into the finance side of things particularly, right? So when I'll go back. So when I was at the ministry, we involved in all the contracts and so on, and we regulated the seismic surveys and the drilling and so on. But I was really concerned. Ultimately, the only purpose of doing all that is to get revenue for the government, right? The government needs to make money out of oil and gas, and with that money, they do all the different services that they do. So I was really concerned about how much money are we actually making from these different things, and how do the taxes work and so on. So I got a good understanding of how the taxes work. And when I did my master's, my project, my thesis was on Trinidad's taxation regime for the deep water particularly. So I really looked into with those BHP discoveries in the deep water, if you had to develop those fields, how much oil or how much gas it needed to be economic, Is it 1 billion barrels? Is it 500 million barrels? How much gas do you need? So I had a very interest in that. And now, again, you're working for a private company. the ultimate goal is to create profits, to generate profits, right? And understanding the pricing, and I do the pricing, I work with the pricing and so on as well. That is basically the difference between what you pay for your service and what you sell at is what money you're making, right? I mean, that's it in a nutshell. But I plan to be more involved in finance. I would like to do some courses and stuff like that to understand finance better. I don't think I do understand it very well, just certain aspects of it. So I think that's pretty basic stuff that a lot of people should understand. And I would advise everybody to look at some free courses online.
All right, thanks very much. So one of our questions focus on you being a Shebang Scholarship winner. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about it? Some more, what was your experience like? What exactly you studied and
Right.
where?
So good. So the Shebang Scholarship, like I said, is awarded by the British High Commission in Trinidad to nationals, and it's done in different countries all over the world. It's awarded to nationals who want to study a full-time master's, 1-year master's degree, and they are awarded. So people apply. There's a long registration, robust registration process. You'll find it online, and you have different rounds. When you get to the final round, you have to explain to them how that degree is going to help your country and how you are going to use that in a leadership position or potential leadership position to affect the country. So mine was in Aberdeen in Scotland. And I chose there based on the degree itself, which was oil and gas enterprise management. It was the only one I found that was a mix between finance, legal, and geoscience and engineering. There was actually courses in all of them. So there was actual drilling engineering, and there was geology, and there was law, and there was economics at the same time. So I like that mix. Aberdeen obviously is a big oil and gas area, so it was pretty interesting being out there. The experience was great. The network is excellent. You have 50,000 people worldwide in this network. In Trinidad, you have probably 100, and we have different events every so often. Actually, last 2 weeks there was a mentoring event that we did. So people who applied for the scholarship, we gave or plan to apply. We gave them. We had some talks, basically one-on-one talks, based on the industry they were applying to, and gave them some tips on how to apply for the scholarship and what they should be looking to do and so on. And it's generally very good networking as well. So I advise anybody to take a look at Shebang, but there are other scholarships as well. There's Commonwealth scholarships, there are government scholarships, there's Fulbright in the US. I'm sure there are quite a few others I don't know about.
So moving on from that, so what do you think about those who can't get graduates, especially who can't get jobs right now, and they're looking to go back to school? What are your thoughts on that, and what do you think they should be focusing on at this point in time?
So I have a personal opinion on that, right? I personally, and this is my opinion, I don't really like the idea of finishing like a BSc degree and then immediately doing a master's because you can't get a job, right? I really, really think that any work experience is going to be really valuable, even if it is not relevant to the degree that you did. I think that doing a BSc, working somewhere, even if it's part-time, even if it's not in your field, getting some experience, thinking about what you really want to do. And then if you have the opportunity, do the master's. I would advise that, right? But I know there are different reasons why people do a master's immediately or why they might do a PhD. It could be because of a scholarship. It could be because of you just can't find anything else. It could be that you have a feeling that I'm going to make myself more marketable. I don't, in this day and age, I don't see a person with a master's and no work experience being any more marketable than somebody with a BSc and no work experience, right? In fact, the masters might make it worse because you feel like you might be too educated at this point without any work experience. So that's just my personal opinion on that. I really think that some work experiences it needs to be in between any 2 degrees that you do.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Javed. So just shifting topics a bit. Let's talk about the energy transition that is impending in our industry. What advice do you have for anyone who is working right now in a geoscience role or a graduate having done geoscience? How can they use their skills to adapt?
Good. So we see, and been hearing about it for a long time, but we're actually seeing major efforts from BP and Shell and other companies to move towards renewable energy and focus less on oil and gas, right? And actually, well, we might know by tonight or tomorrow, but the results of the US election will also play a big role in that. If it's Biden, they will be pushing renewables way ahead of oil and gas, and if Trump wins, conversely, right? But either way, if you are watching market, right, and you look at US and you look at Europe and you look at other countries, there are humongous renewable projects happening everywhere. In the UK at least, and in parts of the US and in India and in Africa, there are billion-dollar solar and wind projects happening. And in Trinidad, as we know, there is going to be a first solar plant from BP and Shell sometime maybe next year or so. I think that people who are in the energy sector already, geoscientists, engineers, other people, we understand the energy sector, right? So we understand the inputs and the outputs. We understand the supply chain. There's an opportunity there to move into a different area or to become valuable in the renewables field. So what I would suggest, if you are a geoscientist and you are thinking, well, look, I don't know how much I don't know if I have a future in oil and gas. Maybe there will be no jobs in this, or maybe I will not have a job in this. I want to understand renewables. I want to understand wind and solar. Go and read up on it. I've been working on a wind project and a solar project recently in the last year or two, in terms of feasibility studies and understanding. And in doing that, I had to learn a lot about how the technology works and how and what are the different considerations you need. In fact, just today, we were working on a proposal for BP's solar project in Trinidad. So we actually need to understand some of that ourselves. I think a lot of background research and reading can be done. You have tons of information available again. How exactly you can transition, it may not be a straight path, right? So I don't think that a geologist can say, well, they study rocks, so therefore I will be able to do this with a wind farm. Yeah. Or with a renewable company. But I think there's definitely a bridge there that is already exists, right? Especially if you work in an energy company and that same energy company is going to do these projects, right? So certainly go read up, learn about it, understand how it works, understand how some of the economics of it works as well.
Yeah. So you really answered a lot of questions that we got, but I want to ask one that you sort of touched on before, but maybe if you have anything to add to it. You have any advice on how to make your job application stand out?
Right. I mean, yeah, that's an interesting question because, you know, if everybody does the same thing, even if it's good advice, they all might not stand out, right? So I think it really has to be specific. I've read so much different things and seen so much different advice on resumes. Some people say make it 1 page, some people say make it 2, some people say make it 10, some people say, you know, it depends totally on what you're applying for. At the end of the day, when somebody goes through a resume, they don't have a lot of time to do it. So you need to make it as, you can make it stand out as much as possible. A graphic could help. You know, before there was a lot of thinking about don't put pictures of yourself and stuff in it. And maybe it's not a good idea, but the thing is people still, they stop and they look at a picture, right? Whether it's a nice picture or not, they might stop and look at it. Those are some ideas, some graphics, some infographics, stuff like that. That's on a physical resume, right? But the challenge is getting somebody to see your resume to begin with, because you can apply and nobody ever looks at it, right? And what I've seen especially is, I've seen some geoscientists and engineers apply for positions and they get discounted. Not because your resume isn't impressive, but because the position they're applying for, you know, the person who is looking at this, the HR person looking at this, they don't see the connection. So if you're applying for a job in sales, right, and your background is in petroleum engineering, they'll be like, well, you overqualified for this position, so they just put it away, right? And they look for somebody with a degree in marketing or something. But maybe your background in engineering is perfect for sales if the sales you're doing is in the energy sector, right? Or it doesn't even matter. It might have some really good benefit for that. That's why I said that one of the things you need to do is know the people in the company. So if you're applying to a company, try to figure out who the people working there are. And it's real easy to go on LinkedIn and mark with the people who work in these different companies. Add them and chat with them a little bit and try to get a little understanding of what they should do. And when the application comes in, at least ask that person to just put in a word and say, hey, just take a special look at this one, I do that a lot for people when they ask. I say, well, just take a look at this one. Don't forget to look at this one. So those are just some tips, I guess. But you see the blind one where you just send in a resume, yeah, that's a tough one. I feel a lot of those just end up going nowhere, especially if you're applying for something where it is not directly related to what you're applying for, if your degree doesn't match exactly your experience.
Yeah. So what advice would you have for anyone looking for a mentor in the industry? What do you look for as a good mentor?
Well, I think that these societies are really great, right? And I mean, in Trinidad, we have AAPG, we have SP, we have GSTT at least in the energy sector, and there are a couple others. And they have multiple chapters. So you have ones in UE and UTT and different ones. I think that connecting with people there, people who are in the industry already, and asking them for advice and tips. Usually, all of us are quite helpful. We're quite willing. I think those are some of the things you want to, right? You just want somebody to give you some tips, some advice. If they're willing to take a look at your resume, that's great as well, whether it's to give you some advice on writing or just in general, Yeah, but you see that recommendation from a person to talk to them and that person to sell you, getting somebody to sell you, that word of mouth is the most powerful thing. That's just like if you buy, you buy something, some good food somewhere, and that person go and tell their friends about it. That is what you want. You want word of mouth. So you want your product, which is yourself, to get good word of mouth, right? That's in a nutshell what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Okay, so two more questions, more on the fun side of things. So what do you like most about your current job?
So when we were in the office, we used to have plenty nice events and food on a Friday and all kind of things
Yeah.
like that. And I got to be on the field and travel to different places and all that type of stuff. So this whole year I've not had that. So I had to figure out what else do I like. And there's still quite a lot of diversity. Yeah. I like the diversity of it in that in one day, so like today, I look at today, for example, I was looking at a solar project, importing a rig, drilling project for Guyana. And then I was seriously had to find out for a client if they get breakfast with a room in Marriott and for what price, right? So there's a lot of diversity in what I do. I like all the different things about it, and I feel like every day I learn new things. Like I just feel like I learn new things all the time, and that makes me feel more rounded.
Yeah. Last question. So what is the greatest career advice you have ever received?
The greatest career advice I ever received. Let me see. Yeah. I don't know if it's the greatest career advice particularly, but
Could be life advice, so any advice that helped you.
I do know that one of the things I always remember, and it's from somebody in the ministry actually, which makes it all the more surprising, Charles, because the people in the ministry don't always talk like this. Was that somebody told me that all they would like to do is make a difference to make the country a better place. That and I've been genuinely, they said all they're trying to do is help the country to get better so people can have a better quality of life, to take people out of poverty, to create opportunities and jobs, to export services and so on. And the same thing I hear repeated in Rams where I am now is that is the fundamental goal of the company, to create opportunities. The whole point of getting business is not to make any one person or group of people rich or anything like that. It's not to make anybody famous. It's to create opportunities. And I can say that I know I have been critically involved in providing at least 400 to 500 jobs in the region in the last couple of years. And even now, like as I tell you, we open an office overseas, right? When we open our overseas office, we need to hire a couple of staff in Trinidad to support that office, right? And that is how we export services and create local opportunity, because those people who get employed here, they spend their money in the economy. They pay taxes to the government. And as that foreign entity grows, we bring Forex back to the country and you grow the local thing. As you do that, you break people out of poverty, you bring them, create sustainable jobs for them. And that is the ultimate goal. If you have hundreds of companies doing that with help from the government, then you don't need as much subsidies. You don't need as much handouts. You don't need as much government jobs where they just give you a job for the sake of having a job. And you create real sustainable wealth, right? So I know you asked me one thing, but it dives off into that. And I really believe that is the goal of business. I remember that conversation in the ministry starting like that, trying to do better for your country.
Yeah, that's really nice. Javed, we really can't thank you enough for taking the time to talk with us and just give us, some very practical and down to earth advice. So thank you very much. I didn't see any more questions coming in the Q&A on Facebook. So if we don't have any, I think we'll wrap up here for today. Thank you again, Javed. Keep safe, everyone, and look out for our next events.
Thank you very much. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Well, Charles, I was gonna ask if he's gonna play the video, but like we don't need to. So.
Did you stop the recording?